Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic video. Hope everyone's doing good. This is it's about 9:20 here on a Saturday. We're in a streak of some seriously nice weather. It's been pretty awesome. Gradually, it's definitely been getting nicer and nicer. Yesterday was just kind of a perfect day weather-wise, and I think today is going to be really nice the rest of the weekend. It's pretty cool. I just started, or technically it hasn't really started, but next week it will. But I'm on break from school, so it's spring break mode all next week. So it's pretty cool. I got a bunch of time off, but and then today also is a big day for me. We're going to see Morbid Angel tonight in Worcester, Mass. Uh, I did a show probably a few weeks ago on Morbid Angel. I try to mix things up with this channel where I do, have some other things outside of just like, your normal or traditional movie reviews. So, yeah, super excited. I can't wait to see them. I've been a fan of Morbid Angel since I was probably 11 or 12 years old. And yeah, long history with that band. Really, real big inspiration for me. Well, just a band that I've always loved, and I have followed for so long. But I always, I don't know, were always really inspired by them personally. So very excited to finally get a chance to finally see them after how many years. So yeah, it's gonna be amazing. So that's gonna be happening tonight, and I'm gonna probably do a show tomorrow or Monday where I will talk about the show. I'll just do like a concert review. So yeah, stay tuned for that. That'll be something very different. And yeah, as far as and then before I get into this movie, which to me and for me, this is without a doubt um, a classic, one of the greatest movies ever. But before I get into that, just a couple of other little dates with Quantum. We uh, we got some shows coming up. We're gonna be doing. I usually like to try to have a little thing on the shows where because the music thing and the film thing is all kind of interconnected with me for me. I try to bring those two things together. So on May 6th we will be at actually May 6th we will be playing on the radio. We're going to be doing a radio show on WRFR, and that will be like a live, probably like an hour 45-minute set. We're going to be playing live on the radio on WRFR, and that's going to be on my buddy Spencer Roulard's electronica music show on WRFR. WRFR is a really great little radio station, a little independent radio station in Rockland, Maine, that does a lot of really cool things, supporting the local arts. And they have an amazing roster of different shows. I mean, any kind of genre you can think of, they cover, and it's pretty awesome. And they've been around for a long time, but so looking forward to that. And then we will be at the Poor Farm on May 12th, which will be at 5:30. So very excited about that. That's coming up. So yeah, some things happening, and then after that, the big All Roads Festival is going to be coming up, and that's going to be on May 19th and May 20th. That's going to be at the Three Tides on the 19th, and then also on the 20th um, at the Maskers Theater, the Underground Lounge, and the Marshall Wharf show, the Three Tide show, is going to be around 9:30 at night, I believe, and then the show Saturday on the 20th is going to be at 4 o'clock, and that's going to be at the Masters Theater, the Underground Lounge, which is a newer venue that just opened. Amazing place. I just went to a show there the other night. Such a cool spot. So stay tuned for that. And then on June 2nd, Quantum will be back at the Gypsy Rose Tavern, which is such an awesome venue, brand new place that just opened first of the new year. This will be our second gig there, and that will be starting around 8 o'clock. That'll be a 3 hour set, one of the longer shows. We got in the habit last summer of playing. The last few years it had been a thing, and we had some time off there for quite a while, but when we kind of came back to playing, we kind of resumed playing these longer sets. I kind of like the 3 hour sets because we can get to, mix things up a little bit, and we get to play a lot of the more ambient based music, especially like kind of in the beginning, and gradually if things are kind of clicking and we're in the zone, we can kind of build the sets around that and slowly build the momentum. So that's going to be on June 2nd at the Gypsy Rose Tavern in Camden, Maine, which is an awesome new venue. And then on June 25th, we will be at the Camden Library, which I'm super excited about. That's a gig that we've done for quite a few years now. I always look forward to doing that. We do that show usually in the amphitheater, behind the theater. Such a cool spot. Beautiful location, amazing look, amazing acoustics. So stay tuned for that. That will be a 1 o'clock show. And we just had another show come in, which is also another thing that we've done for a long time. And that's going to be part of the summer solstice block party in Rockland. That's a pretty big deal because they block off the street on Main Street in Rockland and have music all up and down the area, and it's very cool. And it's funny because we've been doing the solstice gig and the library gig at the Camden Library. We've been doing those two gigs for quite a few years, and those are always fun. They're pretty loose and laid back. We play for a couple hours usually, but I feel like overall those shows have helped get us a few extra fans along the way, and give us a little bit more visibility because there tends to be a lot of people at those events, especially the solstice, and gives us I think we've acquired a few fans through those shows, and I like playing the outdoor venues, so that's the newest thing that just came in. That's going to be on June 17th, and that's going to be at 4 o'clock, and it'll be on Main Street in Rockland, so stay tuned for that. So today's show, I'm really excited about this movie. This is a movie I've been wanting to get to. This, to me, is one of the greatest action sci-fi movies ever, and that is the original RoboCop. This movie is such an iconic movie, one of my all-time favorite action movies. One of the goriest movies I think ever made. It's so brutal. It's amazing. It's amazing, like watching it now. This was a movie I was raised on. Basically, I was raised on as a kid, and I used to see it all the time on VHS. It was on cable. It came out in 1987. Prime time. One of the best decades. one of the decades of like where most of the movies that I cover, most of the movies I seem to cover on this channel are from my two favorite decades, 70s and the 80s. And RoboCop, the original, came out in 87, and without a doubt, one of the greatest movies ever. It was directed by Paul Verhoeven, a legendary Dutch director, who is back in that period. He was just kind of a crazy madman. I mean, he really was. He was known for lots of films of where another great film of his, Total Recall, but he was known for his like gratuitous violence and sex in a lot of his movies. And he's a Dutch filmmaker. Um, he had, just a really great legacy of films. I've always been a big fan of his, and he's still around. He hasn't really put out any movies in a long time. He's almost like 100 years old, which is just crazy. But he did a more recent movie, uh, Benedetta, in 2021, which I was unaware of and I have not seen. RoboCop is the best thing I think he's ever done. That came out in '87. Basic Instinct he also did with Michael Douglas and Sharon Stone. I always forget that he directed that. And of course, the infamous Starship Troopers, which is also another classic. That movie is just so ridiculous and over the top. And I kind of consider that movie to be very much like a B movie. I'm looking forward. I bought that last year on Blu-ray, and for some reason I haven't seen it on Blu-ray. I haven't watched it yet, which is ridiculous. I love that movie to death, and I think that's just a bonkers crazy, just a totally bonkers movie. That came out in '97. Showgirls, which was an infamous movie that he did in 80, or actually 1995. He had a huge career in the '80s into the mid to late '90s. He really was really prolific, and he was cranking out quite a few movies. One of my favorite movies of his, that is a movie I will eventually get to, is Total Recall, and that came out in 1990. That movie is awesome. I love that movie to death. I think it's also one of the best sci-fi movies ever made. One of the best action movies. Just amazing. And the effects in that film, as well as RoboCop, are just like, it's amazing that these movies were made when they were made because of really the lack of there's no CGI in a lot of these films. A lot of the stuff is in camera. It's just brilliant. He also made another film called L in 2016. So he has still, made some films that are, you know, uh, relatively recent. But I would have to say that my of favorite films. He also did The Hollow Man, which I've been hearing uh, about again, and I that's a movie I really want to see again. I remember that was pretty good, and it's basically a more modern take on The Invisible Man, and that's a movie I really want to see again. That stars Kevin Bacon, I believe, and I haven't seen that in a long time. But RoboCop, I'd have to say, is my favorite film of his of all time. It starred Lisa Gibbons, Peter Weller, the iconic actor. Peter Weller is just an amazing actor. He's got such a great um, collection of movies that he's been in. He's also a really, I think, legitimately a really great actor. He also like had a real extensive background in theater, but very talented guy. Nancy Allen, she's wonderful in this film, and I think one of the greatest villains of all time ever in a movie, uh, who played Clarence, Kurtwood Smith. He is like the epitome of badass. He is like one of the most ruthless bastards ever to be in a film. I mean, he's such a sadistic bastard in RoboCop. Miguel Ferrer is also in it. He's so awesome. Wanda the Jesus, just such a great cast in this movie. Um, in this movie, again, it is the epitome of just balls to the wall action, and in in a in the shape of one of the greatest sci-fi movies ever. It is, the basic story is it deals with Peter Weller's character, who is a police officer, and it takes place in Detroit, uh, and where crime is just rampant, and the city is and society is crumbling, and he eventually gets killed, and through this new technology, he's brought back as this RoboCop. And this movie is so brutal. Like, I always forget how just they Paul Verhoeven went for it with this movie with the violence. It also like I think the movie is so not only is it such an incredibly it's such an incredibly entertaining movie, but I also feel like this movie just does such an awesome job with like having um, a, having a really interesting take on social like with social commentary. It does a pretty fascinating job of looking at crime and injustice and poverty and class, and also the idea that where technology grows to such a to, to such a point that it you know eclipses humankind, and that it kind of spirals out of control. And it also has, to a degree, the idea it has some religious symbolism in it, also, particularly around. There's that one scene in this film. RoboCop was a very controversial film at the time because of the violence. Like it's one of the most I think it's one of the most brutal movies ever made in some ways. But it was controversial for that reason even at the time when it came out in '87. But it also ties in these religious themes, particularly around the Christian idea of like resurrection, and it plays with that because I remember there's one iconic scene of where RoboCop Peter Weller is essentially like walking on water, and there's this whole kind of metaphor of him, symbolically where the image of Jesus, and so I remember as a kid even, but even where this movie was a big hit, but it was really controversial because of the violence, and then it also had these religious themes into it, intertwined with it. And I remember it was kind of a controversial movie to have that, kind of all together, and it being this mega blockbuster. I picked up this director's cut on Blu-ray few years ago, and this edition is just incredible. Again, this was a movie I saw, you know, thousands of times as a kid. It was always on cable. Saw it on VHS, and then I have a few editions of this movie on DVD. And I picked this up. I can't remember where I picked this up. I might have got this at Goodwill, or I might have got this at Bull Moose. But this edition is incredible. And again, it's like one of those experiences when you watch things on Blu-ray or 4K. About 99%, I find for me, about 99% of the time, it's like watching that film for the very first time, just because of the sheer quality. You know, these editions are always remastered, so the picture, the the soundtrack, just amazing. And this is one of the best. Like, this truly is an incredible package. And it has a really awesome Q&A between Peter Weller and actually the cast, the whole entire cast of RoboCop, that was done fairly recently. There's a big cast with Paul Verhoeven and Peter Weller and the rest of the cast of RoboCop and the producers and the writers. There's a really killer Q&A thing where they were at a film festival. And it's pretty long. It's about an hour or so. And they really go in depth. And the questions are awesome. And they really go into... They take a deep dive into, what made this movie so amazing and so ahead of its time. And that, I honestly don't think that... Well, I kind of think it's an example, even though I don't really believe it, but it's something you hear people say, like, they don't make movies like this anymore. But I kind of think that if you're going to play that card or say that, or talk of things like that, I think this is kind of an example of that. Because of the violence, the social commentary, and again, it's not too heavy-handed with the social commentary, but it's critical of society big time, and it raises a lot of questions, and the idea of the themes of organized religion, the symbolism. So I don't think that this movie, if this came out now, I think it would be really different. I think it would be sanitized. And I think because this movie was a big hit, but then it was also incredibly controversial at the time because of the themes and the violence. I don't think that this movie would be the same today. And and that being said, there actually was a remake, and I actually have the remake right here. This came out about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and this is the remake of RoboCop. I actually bought this. Not a really big fan of this film. It has some interesting elements. Gary Oldman is in it. The guy who plays Peter Weller's character, RoboCop, is actually pretty good. He's a really good actor. He was in the Suicide Squad films. He's pretty good, but the movie itself, that's one of the biggest things about this film of where I have problems is that I feel like they did try to make they did try to have like a reimagining of the original story, and it's interesting to a degree, but the overall tone of the film and the violence and the heavy kind of metaphor, with the use of like symbolism with the religious aspects, this film doesn't have any of that. It's like, and this movie was rated, I think PG-13, which is just like, I feel like sacrilegious if you're gonna make a RoboCop movie, especially if you're gonna remake or have a reimagining of a classic movie. RoboCop, the original, is definitely rated R, but this was rated like PG-13, and it's, again, it has some things about it. I like the character of RoboCop, like he's pretty decent. It has some interesting different angles around how they approach the character, but and some of the tech, the effects are pretty interesting. But overall, the film is like, it's such a sanitized version. Like the violence is so toned down in this film. It's like, it's baffling. And so I overall, like, I don't like this movie. I'm not sure why I bought it on Blu-ray. I got it. I think I got this really cheap somewhere, probably at Goodwill for like a couple of bucks, and it's a Blu-ray edition. So I ended up picking it up. I've given this movie a chance a few times, and it's like a watered down version basically of the original that came out in '87. Not, and again, not just the violence, but the tone, the kind of the critique of you know societal problems. It doesn't really go in that direction, and the biggest problem is the violence itself. Like it really is this watered down version, and I just was like, how I was wondering like what's going on in these filmmakers' heads to, they know they have this reference point with this classic film, and there's actually a few films in the franchise, but especially the first one, they have this as their reference point. Why would they intentionally try to make it this watered down version? Obviously, it might be to sell more tickets, or have something that kids could actually see, but I don't know. But I don't really recommend this movie. It's okay in some areas, like I said, but you cannot. It's one of those movies. Like every time I watch this, I've only seen this a few times, but I've tried giving it a chance. But it makes me want to watch the original one because the original is just so, it's such a juggernaut of a movie, and it goes that extra mile. And this is just like a really watered down version of it. And there was also a remake of another Paul Verhoeven movie a few years back, also where they remade with Colin Farrell, who's a tremendous actor. They remade Total Recall, which was also a Paul Verhoeven film, and the same thing with that movie. I just super sanitized, with the sex and the violence, and even the themes. Like, I don't get it, and I think that they're both of those films, especially this newer RoboCop, it really nails that point home. Well, there are really great remakes, there are really great imaginings out there, but those are examples of how you do it in the wrong way, or do it the wrong way. Where and it brings back that idea. Well, they just don't make them like they used to. You know, but again, going back to the original from 1987, one of the greatest action sci-fi movies ever made. My favorite role by Peter Weir, and also my favorite film by Paul Verhoeven. He was at the height of his power. This movie is just balls to the wall action and violence, and just such a great film. When you think that this came out in '87, before blue screen and CGI, this film was a big budget film back then, but they had such imagination and so much creativity, and it's amazing how well this film holds up, especially this edition. Like it's mind blowing. It's amazing how this film feels so relevant now, and it completely has stood the test of time and stands the test of time, and there's nothing dated about it. It's just so awesome. So yeah, such a classic, one of my all-time favorites. Uh, Please check it out if you've never seen it, especially this edition. So this is Jason Dean, a film fanatic. If you like this page, please subscribe and keep the comments coming. Thank you again for all the support, and we will see you soon. Peace.